Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Everyone's adjusting their headphones.
We're talking to our audience.
Looking, staring off into space. Let's go right to announcements, shall we? If anybody out there can give me information on the status of the National Atheist Ombuds, whether it's moving or coming back or gone to some other website or something, I would really appreciate it. These were the guys whose job it was to collect reports of prejudice and discrimination against atheists in the media, and their website is gone. But not just gone, not just down, gone. So if you want,
not good.
Was it secular.ombudsman.ws? If you want that URL, man, you can just get it. In the meanwhile, I suggest the following alternative, the Non-Believer Anti-Discrimination Project at www.nonbeliever.org. That is an informational resource on past and ongoing discrimination against non-believers, but not at like an information central clearinghouse organizing nexus. The Celebrity Atheist webpage at www.celebatheists.com has been updated. Woohoo! We've only been looking for that for about, at least 6 months. The new site is wiki-based, which means that updates can be made on a continuous basis by those who have interest and time to volunteer. And I want to give my thanks to Reed Esau for setting that up and letting me know. Yeah, it's cool. You can now, as a reader of the site, you can go and submit famous atheist entries. But
cool.
I submitted some.
Okay.
Since I know some people that are reasonably well known.
Right.
But I went there this morning to see if my entries had been put into the full list. They hadn't yet, and it's been quite some time. 2 weeks. But the what is it called? The sandbox area, the place where you can freely write stuff and then it gets reviewed and decide whether to put it in, is getting fuller and fuller. And a lot of people don't understand the Celebrity Atheist webpage is only for atheist celebrities that are alive. So, if you go there, keep that in mind. And Reed, if you're listening to this,
skip the dead one.
Maybe some great big bold-faced red blinking disclaimer, we don't list dead famous atheists here, would be in order. Heart of the Beholder film, which you've been talking about for quite some time. Yes. I think I told you last episode that it was out. I have now got my copy and seen it. As has Matt. Anybody else here seen it?
No.
And I want to give you a quick review. This film is based on the true story of a family who ran a chain of video rental stores in St. Louis. And what happened to them when the local fundamentalists decided to interfere with their business. Yeah. And this is going all the way back to mainly to the video release of the film Last Temptation of Christ. Mm-hmm. So the woman who's the executive producer, Darlene Lieblich, is an atheist, has been putting a lot of effort into getting the word out about this film to atheists.
Right.
And yet, I have to say, having seen the film, it's not an atheist film. It is a film about problems in our culture with religious intolerance and the way that politics can get caught up with that and simultaneously take advantage of and be taken advantage of by it. It does do that, but it's not an atheist film.
Huh.
As a film in general, I would rate it, say on a scale of 5 stars, I would give it 3. I would say average. Matt, what's your impression?
I'd probably be closer to 2. It seems to be like a high-end movie of the week quality film.
Yeah. I was actually quite impressed by how good it was given the tiny budget that they had.
Yeah, there were some things about it that I really liked. don't have huge problems with the acting or the story. They did a really good job of telling the whole story, showing how this affected the guy's life and the results and how he eventually got his revenge. I was disappointed that they didn't address the First Amendment issues more directly.
Right.
That they didn't go into detail on the Citizens for Decency organization and, other issues. This is basically the story of one person's life and problem with Citizens for Decency.
But it is a film and not a documentary. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to make it have mass appeal. So I can understand, just saying, them saying to themselves, well, our main characters are going to be the people who are the target of this religious group, so they're going to be sympathetic already, and that's enough. We don't have to go into detail about exactly the dotting the I's and crossing all the T's on the legalities of what was done to them, or the illegalities, right? How exactly it violated their rights.
I don't want to imply that I thought it was bad. I'm glad I bought it. I'm glad I watched it. It was a good telling the story.
I just want our audience to know that not to be shocked or disappointed when they find out it's not a film about a family who are atheists and how they are religiously persecuted. Yeah. It's not about that.
It was interesting to me on another level because I lived in St. Louis and had a membership to his first video store.
Really?
At the time that he opened it.
Cool.
Video library. I didn't realize it until I saw the film.
Yeah.
Because I moved before he was attacked. But there was a clip of the film where they showed the original membership cards being printed out. And I had one. I don't have any more, but yeah.
Cool.
So he was just down the street from me, and they brought up the fact that Chuck Berry was his first customer.
Yeah, is that really true?
Kept him in business. I don't know if that's true. Very well could be true because Chuck Berry lived down the street from us in Winston. So it's very possible.
So, I would give it a thumb up.
Yeah.
One thumb up.
It's worth watching.
Certainly. Worth paying the what are they charging?
I think it's $30.
30? That's not 30.
Was it?
For the DVD? It's not 30.
Maybe I'm thinking of the guy who wasn't there. One of them was like $29. One of them was cheaper. I can't remember.
Wow, that's a lot.
I don't remember either of them being that expensive, and I should have that information in front of me, and I don't.
I'm happy to have bought it because I would like to see more movies made along the docudrama line that tell stories which are important. I would like to see this done a little differently.
Right. Don't stop talking.
I'd like to have seen this done a little differently, but I was happy for the most part. What I saw.
Yeah. My take is they made the film the way that they could and the way they thought would work best, and I can't fault them for that. It's just because some atheists make a film does not mean that it has to be some kind of preachy. Well, it's ridiculous to believe in God in the first place, and we're more rational than thou and stuff. And that's fine. On the other hand, the other movie that we want to do.
Oh, sorry about that.
Is, Russell, are you interrupting us? Can we go on?
A little bit.
Should I share my mic over here?
No, you're fine.
Okay. The other movie we want to review is called The God Who Wasn't There, which is a documentary and is an atheistic film.
I didn't see that one.
Yes. And you have as well, Matt?
Yes, I
Russell
have my
has not
copy.
seen it yet, and he's typing anyway, so.
I have my copy, and I've watched it several times.
Yeah.
I could have been more pleased, I suppose, but I was very, very happy with what I saw.
I was a little disappointed.
Was it because you were under the expectation that this was a documentary that Jesus never existed? Because that was the impression that I had originally had, and that's not what the documentary is about.
What disappointed me was that his central argument, and I'll get to the interviews in a bit, but the filmmaker's central argument is, look, here's the sequence of events of the books of the Bible, and there's this gap in time and big question marks there, right? But you can do better than that. If you're talking about lack of evidence for an historical Jesus, right? He didn't even begin to address the main sources that Christians point to, the main extra-biblical sources that we talked about last episode, right? didn't even touch on them, didn't mention that they exist, didn't even in any of his interviews with the historian guy, didn't even come up for him to say, yes, well, believers like to say that there are these historical references, but they're all bogus. Not even that. And so, when I see a documentary that's making a point, I wanted to make the point in a way that will carry some weight with the people on the other side.
Right.
And if you leave the Christians watching this thing with the easy out of, well, but this guy's ignoring Josephus, right? Then he's missed the target completely.
I think I was under the impression that the movie was going to be about the lack of historical evidence to support that Jesus ever existed. To me, that's not what the movie was about.
I agree.
That was touched on, but it was more of a general documentary about how the Bible is unreliable and faith is unwarranted on the whole. And I would have liked to have seen a lot more factual evidence. I would have liked to have seen more rebuttal of evidence provided by Christians.
Right.
But for what he did in putting together a short 1 hour documentary.
Oh, yes. And let me say, I think that both of these films are fine efforts, right? Both of them are well worth having been made, and I'm glad both of them exist, and I'm glad that I got copies of them.
Bit of discussion in the chat room. The
reason to have these kinds of films is to break new territory, break new ground, and then for other people to follow up, right? Once it's been proved that you can do it, what's the next one like?
And I'm anxiously waiting. First of all, I'm anxiously waiting his feature film, which will be out next June, called The Beast, which is a fictional story about a high school or college student in a Christian school who begins to discover evidence that all of this is just bullshit. And he's calling the movie The Beast. Cool. He's going to release it on June 6, 2006. Which is, of course, going to outrage Christians left and right. But in addition to looking forward to his feature film, I'm also looking forward to other people's documentaries, which start where this one left off, as you were talking about. This one laying the groundwork to show that this is feasible and get the word out that, the evidence that's often provided in favor of the Bible, that there are contradictory evidences and lines of thought that, faith isn't as warranted as a lot of people would have you think.
Right. My favorite interviews, and this is what I wanted to say about the interviews, is the interviews are kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
Right? There isn't, given that the filmmaker himself opens the film and with all these graphic display things showing with the breaks in the timeline of the history of the Bible and stuff. His interviews aren't there to support that. The interviews are coming at the question from other directions, which, I am not going to say that if you can't make a slam dunk, 100% solid argument that you shouldn't say anything, because I don't believe that.
So you think he just tried to cover too much
material? I think in an hour he had a lot of different things, which may, from a certain perspective, that makes it an excellent first film of this type.
Yeah.
Right? So, I'm not really complaining. I'm very glad the movie was made. I like it. I'm very glad it was done. Very glad I have it. But I think it needs to be the first step. It needs to be viewed as the first step.
There's a number of organizations which are going to be showing this in theaters and putting out invites for people to come watch it. While I definitely would recommend that because the documentary itself is good, I mostly recommend buying the DVD because the extended interviews that are on there, the alternate audio, like a telephone interview with Richard Dawkins, there's some really good information that he included as extras which didn't make the film.
Mm-hmm. Right. We watched some of those extras, and I was actually quite fascinated with them.
Yeah, obviously I don't agree with everybody interviewed. He interviewed the Christian professor of his former school.
But the filmmaker didn't agree with him either.
Right, and then there's also, I had a small problem with the atheist Christian, the gray-haired, gray-bearded author. He's an atheist. He also attends, I believe it's a Presbyterian church, and he has kind of this enjoyment of the pomp and he agrees in general with the morals and loves the theater of the church, so he continues to go.
Right.
If that's what he wants to do, that's fine. I obviously don't agree with that, but the points that he made when interviewed with regard to the veracity of the claims, they were good points.
I wouldn't complain if all the Christians in the United States went and started thinking about it the way he does.
Absolutely
that would
not.
be an improvement. So, okay. So, basically, I would say, I'm going to say a thumb and a half for The God That Wasn't There.
Because of what I think it can be later, I'll agree and maybe go beyond. I really enjoyed it, and of the two, this is the one that I would rather watch, and I've already watched it a couple times. Yeah. But
both good, and both groups of filmmakers deserve support.
I hadn't seen Passion of the Christ, and a lot of clips from that. And I was just freaking out.
Were you around when we did our review of it?
Yeah.
Did we lie?
There's this great moment in the film where he, the
doctor. What was hilarious was the crow that goes after the guy.
Yeah.
It's so contrived. I guess so. You say so. It's like,
that is the slapping Mel Gibson upside the head moment, as far as I'm concerned, because that's the guy that denies Jesus, right? And so, a crow comes down and pecks out his eyeball.
Yeah.
The moment you get Christians saying crap like that, they deserve a stern talking to.
Yeah.
Anyway, so how many thumbs would you give the God That Wasn't There?
1.5 sounds good to me.
1.5 thumbs.
1.5 hands.
You know what we could do?
Give me that kitchen knife.
we could have a film rating scale in sixes. Is that 1 6, 2 6, or 3 6s? The 3 6s movie would be the best. And then I would be rating God That Wasn't There 2.
Yeah, I'd give it 2 6s.
So it's just a 6-6.
Yeah, it's a 66, not a 66. All right.
So there was some feedback in the chat room. That was many minutes ago now. But,
that's all right.
One of them said, Lord of Unbelief, saying, I think atheist movies are still in their infancy, just like how gay and lesbian movies started.
Agreed.
And then Ice Flame Phoenix responds, gay and lesbian movies haven't really gone anywhere unless you keep grounded with the really alternative film.
Well, they've had some television series,
That's true.
Yeah. And not just queer eye, but the straight guy. There's a number of HBO and Showtime things.
Well, there's Will and Grace, which is what they all hate.
There was a previous atheist film, and I should have thought of this before coming over to the show. I've seen this thing.
Is it the greatest story ever told? Because that's what convinced me.
No. This was a film about a guy getting married and his family is religious and how he's not and how they interfere, and he just goes along with his life trying to have this secular wedding. And then at the end of the film, his aunt pulls out a gun and shoots him in the head because he's
wow.
He has to go to Jesus. And I would say that gets half a star.
Yeah.
Half a 6? So 3?
Half a star. No, not a 3. Because if that was the case, then a 333 would be, a middle of the road movie.
I guess you could divide the 6 and just cut off the tail and make it a 0.
I don't really want to go to the 6s scale.
Sure.
That was a joke. Because I'm not a big fan, personally, of taking on Satanist imagery for atheism, because...
Right, we don't believe in that.
I think we don't believe in that either, and it confuses the issue. Though it does, of course, greatly annoy Christians.
Yes.
Also from the chat room was mentioned that the DVD of Heart of the Beholder is 1995, at customflix.com. That's
1995. Well worth it at 1995.
So there you go.
So is it the guy that wasn't there that's expensive? I don't remember it being expensive.
I'm not sure.
For you.
Yeah, would you please? Thank you, Mr. Producer Man. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to say about the films before we move on? Okay. Center for Inquiry Events Calendar, October 27th to 30th, Toward a New Enlightenment, International Academy of Humanism World Congress, and the Council for Secular Humanism's 25th anniversary at the State University of New York at Buffalo Amherst campus and the Buffalo Marriott in Amherst. Distinguished scientists, academicians, and authors from around the world will confront the moral and scientific challenges facing the world by backward-looking ideologies and the urgent need to create a new roadmap to a new enlightenment. General registration is $195 a person. Price includes all conference sessions. To register or for more information, call the Council for Secular Humanism at 1-800-458-1366. That's 1366, not 13666. How much is the guy that wasn't there?
Oh, sorry, that's the soundtrack.
Never mind. December 10th to 17th, the CFI Cruise. Join Daniel Dennett, Susan Blackmore, Paul Kurtz, and Adam Hart Davis. Cruise to Cabo San Lucas, Mazatlan, and Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, with secular humanists and skeptics aboard Holland America's Oosterdam. Join leading minds in critical inquiry in their swim trunks for 7 days of entertaining and educational lectures. I added the swim trunks.
God Who Wasn't There DVD only is $24.98.
Okay,
DVD
25.
and CD together is $29.98.
Still well worth the
see
price.
why I'd want the CD.
Well, David Byrne did the editing on it, and there's some good music.
Did David Byrne actually work on that film with him?
On the music, I don't think he did anything on the film.
Huh. Because David Byrne has been making with these atheist kind of messages in his songs lately.
Shouldn't send him a letter and see if we can get him up on the list of atheist celebrities.
Hey. For 7 days of entertaining and educational lectures, discussions, and recreational activities, prices start at just a mere $1,472.84 each for two in a cabin. For more information and for reserving your spot on the CFI Cruise, please contact 1-800-398-7571 or cruise@cfiflorida.org. Yeah, I'm not going on any freaking cruise. But, you know.
You know, for these announcements, we need some of that sprightly music and a little typing in the background, like
these were news?
Al Franken has for his little boring corrections. I love that.
Al Franken's talking about doing a cruise.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Anybody want to do some news? Russell, would you like to
Sure.
read us some news items, please?
All right.
For the record. By the way, do we know what's happening with our broadcast today?
Yeah, we are not currently going out on Free Thought Radio Live. This may be news to people unless they're currently listening to this as a rerun on Free Thought Radio, which will be sometime in the future for us. In fact, Atheist Network has been sort of silently disappearing for a long time now, and we thought it was a good idea to take up talks with Free Thought Radio, and we'll get issues ironed out hopefully by the next show.
Yeah, we were hoping we'd be on Free Thought Radio Live today, but not.
Right.
But I want to make a statement here before we move on that I've met Reginald Finley. He's an incredibly cool guy.
Right.
I am sure that the ebbing, diminishing away of Atheist Network that it's been undergoing is the result of him having other things that he has to do, and that happens. That atheism is largely a volunteer movement, and very few people getting paid by anybody else to do it.
There's no money in it.
This is why you don't see a lot of cathedrals to atheists.
Right. So I think we need to be appreciative of anything that people do manage to actually contribute. And Reggie has been great, and I love his show, and it's.
And for how many years has it been on? I mean,
a long time.
Long time.
Many years. Absolutely.
So there's nothing personal here. We're just trying to take our information that we're contributing to the public and get it out the most efficient way possible.
Yes.
So that's why we're making this move.
Right.
So, who wants to talk about Terri Schiavo for a couple of minutes?
Sure. She's dead.
Yes, she's still dead.
She's still dead.
That was in the news.
They did the autopsy and they found out she was still dead.
They did the autopsy and she did not rise up and eat the brains of the people doing the autopsy. But you'll remember that this became a big issue, which I managed to mostly ignore during the time it was actually happening, just like I ignore all things I consider pulp news as much as it's possible, which is why I don't know really what happened to the Michael Jackson trial, didn't care about Lacey Peterson. Thank you for letting me know.
You're welcome. Now you're tainted.
But the thing is, Terri Schiavo sort of became news when the real news, when the religious right took up the cause and started using it for all sorts of disgusting purposes, like calling for that judge's head. I mean, you know, basically using him as a poster boy for the horrible
they want
judges.
his head so they could take out half of that judge's brain and put it in the huge cavity in Terri Schiavo's head?
I think in their opinion, he's already operating with half a brain.
Well, great. Then there's exactly enough.
Not the judge.
They take that out.
They would think so.
They would think so.
They think.
Right? So they would take the brain that they believe he has.
Yeah, so
fix up Terri Schiavo.
There was all this stuff.
And she'd have all this great legal knowledge. Do you remember on Angel when the guy on the Angel TV show where the black guy got the injection of legal knowledge from the evil cults?
That was cool.
Gun. Thank you. All right. Yes. So Terri Schiavo's still dead.
Yes, indeed. But you'll also remember that there was all this right-wing stuff about how she's not really even in a coma, really, and and she's fine. She's
dancing
around. Get up.
And...
You know, she's getting better. And there were these videos that came out with Terri supposedly following a balloon with her eyes. Right.
Yeah.
Well, the autopsy reveals that not only was her brain half gone when she died, but she was blind!
Well, okay, now hang on. She was blind on account of the vision centers of her brain that were gone.
Yeah,
well, that's blind.
Not because her eyes weren't functioning. And this is where, people that don't understand anything about biology might have a problem and need this explained to them.
Does she have her eyes?
Yes, and the eyes twitched. And by the way, did you ever watch the balloon video?
No.
Sure, all 10 seconds of it.
Yeah, but did you notice that they showed the balloon and then they zoomed in on her face and her head was moving around?
Yeah.
But they didn't actually establish that her head was moving around to the same places as the balloon.
Oh, you mean they didn't have them both in the same shot?
No, absolutely not.
Oh,
and this... I had not watched it until I heard about the blindness thing. And this was the video that Bill Frist took and said, yeah, as in my professional opinion as a doctor, this 10 seconds of video clearly shows that she's perfectly healthy.
Right. And you could just as easily say, oh, and in this shot, laser beams are shooting out of her eyes and she's engraving the Gettysburg Address on the opposite wall.
Yeah, now, there were other people in the room. And I think a fairer kind of suspicion to have is that when you're standing over a human vegetable with a balloon and it's thrashing around, right, you see where the eyes go and you move the balloon there.
Could be.
Possible. Who knows?
But it's also the case, I heard, that there were 10 hours of video from which they got that 10-second clip. Which, even psychic John Edwards... can perform under that.
That's
so what are they doing?
Cherry picking.
They're cherry picking. They're looking for only things that can be used to support their case, right, and throwing out all the rest. Yeah, I have another example of that here. Do you want to finish your story first? Because I want to talk about how they're still doing that.
If you're going to go off on a tangent,
no, it's not. It's Terri Schiavo.
Okay.
Okay. I want to talk about how they are still doing exactly that. They're still cherry-picking the info. This is crazy, fundy commentary on Schiavo from June 16th by Dr. Rick Scarborough. On Wednesday, Pinellas Pasco medical examiner John Thogmartin announced the results of the autopsy performed on Terri Schiavo. Those who are still trying to rationalize her death claim it confirms their position. Not at all.
God.
The examiner concluded that Terri, who died on March 31st, nearly 2 weeks after her feeding tube was removed, had suffered irreversible brain damage which, quote, no amount of therapy or treatment could have regenerated, unquote, due to the, quote, massive loss of neurons, unquote. He also concluded that Schiavo was in a... Okay, I'm going to stop saying the quotes. It's annoying. Persistent vegetative state and not minimally conscious as her parents had maintained. However, Dr. Thogmartin emphasized that none of his findings are conclusive and that such a diagnosis can only be made on a living patient and cannot be confirmed with certainty through an autopsy.
Oh, for
Pete's
sake.
First of all, if autopsies were worthless, we wouldn't have autopsers.
Right.
To coin, actually, I'm not coining that phrase. That phrase is used in a fine spoof science fiction film called... Invasion.
Yeah.
There's autopsies, and then there's autopsies. Anyway, so this professional autopser cut her head open and looked inside.
I think autopser was a transformer.
And I'm sure, like any professional in science, he did emphasize there are some rational limits to what he can figure out in an autopsy.
Right.
Of course there are. But to suggest that because he says that, therefore none of his findings are worthwhile at all, to go so far as to say those who are still trying to rationalize her death claim it confirms their position, not at all. Well, yeah, in fact, it does.
Quite a lot.
It does confirm their position, 98, 99%, say.
Right.
Probably more than that. But it's just unconscionable the way that he's cherry-picking that one thing, taking advantage of this man's honesty. Taking advantage of his honesty in order to deny the validity of the autopsy physician's entire line of work.
Yeah, because, this is what the creationists do, too. Any scientist worth his salt will say, nothing is 100% certain. Things can be like 99.999% certain, but there's always the little sliver of doubt that, the real world actually, is an illusion.
And when they say that, you can just see the theists all have orgasms. It's amazing. Yeah.
Because there's a difference between 0.0001% doubt and 87% doubt.
Right.
Yeah, but to them, any amount of doubt destroys their beliefs and faith utterly. Because if you have a bit of doubt, you have no faith.
These are people who work off of faith and not facts, which is why Jeb Bush is still pursuing this stuff even after they've been exposed as complete liars.
Yeah. Go.
Governor Jeb Bush asked a state prosecutor Friday to look into the circumstances of Terri Schiavo's collapse, saying a new autopsy report revealed a possible gap between when Schiavo fell unconscious and when her husband called paramedics. That was 15 years ago, for those of you keeping
count. New autopsy report, as opposed to the old autopsy report.
What sort of a gap are we talking about?
What?
What sort of a gap are we talking about?
They're saying 40 minutes. Bush, who vehemently fought the court-ordered removal of Schiavo's feeding tube, said he had decided to seek an investigation after speaking with Dr. John Thogmartin, the medical examiner who conducted the autopsy the day before Thogmartin's report was released Wednesday. According to records, the report said, a 911 call was placed at 5:40 a.m. on February 25th, 1990. Schiavo's husband, Michael, told Larry King on CNN in 2003 that he had found his wife on the floor outside their bedroom at about 4:30 a.m. So that's all he's going on?
Yeah. No, and there's another one. I think there's another interview, isn't there? Or something. Anyway.
He told King and numerous lawyers that he had quickly called 911 and his wife's brother Bobby Schindler, who lived in the same apartment complex. So he said about 4:30 a.m.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And based on that and the phone records, isn't it possible that it was like 5:30 and he was wrong? Or
yeah, I think it's important that we not play the same game that the fundamentalists are playing.
That's true,
right? Let's not cherry pick the fact that human beings can be wrong about, scheduling.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Right? And say, therefore, there's nothing there.
But
I don't mind if there is an investigation to try to explain that gap, but I would mind if
I do mind that the governor of Florida is persecuting this guy.
When I read an article like this, they said they'd already investigated that.
Oh, had they?
Yeah, and there was no indication of a gap. There was no indication of anything wrong.
Yeah, I mean, first of all,
it's already been investigated.
If he was just lying and records showed that he made the call at 5:40 a.m., wouldn't he say, "Yeah, I found her at 5:39 a.m."
Yeah.
I mean, he just said, "I called 911 immediately."
Yeah.
To me, one of the things that's most troublesome about this is that Jeb Bush is claiming that this is based on the autopsy results, but the only two pieces of evidence he refers to are a statement from Larry King and the phone records. He doesn't mention anything about the autopsy.
Yeah, you're right. And, of course, pile on top of that the irony of this attack on the validity of the autopsy in the first place from other people in the,
I find it a little...
In the persistent vegetative state deniers.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's happening is...
It's a distraction.
No, I think it's a sudden bout of cognitive dissonance among the theists, because they were so convinced that Terri was practically, about to jump up out of her bed, that this autopsy has left them needing to either grasp onto some other reason why what they did was good, or else feel like, oh my God, we just made this guy's life a living hell for months and months and months for no reason.
I don't think they'll ever come to deal with the truth there.
Yeah. I would want to know if this has been investigated already. Because if it has,
I recall reading that.
Okay.
It's not in that.
If it has been investigated already, then it's just more of the same, more of the denying the results they got in the last investigation. And
it's just going sticking their fingers in their ears.
Just going to read the end of this article. Although religious conservatives applauded Bush's earlier efforts to keep Schiavo alive, they sharply criticized him for not seizing custody of her in the days before she dies, an option that he said was not legal. Were he interested in running for president and being put on the 2008 ticket as vice president, this would pay dividends, Sabato said. Jeb Bush, as a successful politician, could not be unaware that this would put him in good standing.
Yeah.
I think that this should be... I think that the Terri Schiavo case should stay alive, not because it's anybody's business, but because you need to take every opportunity to hammer the fact that the religious right lies and lies and lies and doesn't care whose lives they destroy for a political advantage.
And once they've targeted somebody's life, no evidence showing that they were wrong is enough to make them stop. In fact, evidence that they were wrong is just grounds for them to whoop up some new excuse to keep persecuting that same person so that they never have to face the facts.
That's right. Oh, I hate them.
This crazy, funny commentary goes on. Do you want to hear any more?
No, yes.
You do? Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Pinellas Circuit Judge George W. Greer, who sentenced Terri to death by starvation, never laid eyes on her. Now, how ironic. Neither did the dickweeds in Congress. They never laid eyes on her. They watched little video snippets.
That's right.
His original finding that she was in a persistent vegetative state was made in 1990. What, she's going to magically grow her brain back in the intervening 15 years?
They call it persistent for a reason.
Yeah, right. Right.
When your brain weighs half what it should, there's little chance.
Over the years, he consistently refused to consider new evidence on her condition. No, that's a lie, Pee-wee. He, in fact, rejected things that weren't evidence, that didn't count. Federal courts refused to intervene. No, they were forced to intervene, and when they did intervene, they decided the same thing.
Right.
They decided that the previous findings were valid, despite being specifically authorized to do so by an act of Congress. Well, so what? Just because you give somebody the right, you know what? If you want, you can murder that man over there. Here's a handgun. He refused to shoot that guy, even though he was authorized to. The issue here is whether that guy ought to be killed, not whether he was the person that you're criticizing was authorized to kill him.
It's just nuts.
Beloved, this is a sad chapter in the history of a nation founded on the ideal of liberty and justice for all, and a testament to show how far we've strayed from our biblical heritage.
Ugh.
Terri Schiavo is dead. Her martyrdom should encourage us to fight for the rights of the disabled against a medical profession, a judicial system, and a culture, all too inclined to dispose of inconvenient life.
Her martyrdom. What did she martyr to? Her wishes were that she die were she in this state.
Yeah. Not only that,
St. Schiavo.
I would like to know if these people are going to whoop up a big holy war against, say, pest control. That's inconvenient life. And rats in your house that you poison are just as much human beings as this empty shell was.
Mm-hmm. Just as much as what? Was it? Never mind, I can't.
By the way, have you ever seen Orson Scott Card's weekly column?
No.
It's at ornery.org.
Yeah.
It's called...
Some issues of Orson Scott Card.
What?
Some very serious issues of Orson Scott Card.
Yeah, but I had a lot of respect for Orson Scott Card, even though he was homophobic, and he had some great issues in the Ender series, which I thought were really intelligent and thoughtful. And then you lent me that tape of him in Secular Humanist Revival a long time ago, where he was sounding like a damn church-state separation liberal. Something has happened to him.
Yeah,
he's crazy.
He's crazy now.
He is the prototype conservative party line. War is good. Liberals are trying to destroy America. I mean, I wouldn't rule out the possibility that his brain has been taken over by buggers.
Wow, that's disturbing.
I just happened to look up a recent column because I was wondering if he'd say anything new about Terri Schiavo, and he didn't. So I went back to March, and he had a lot to say about that.
Yeah.
He bought the balloon thing, hook, line, and sinker, and he talked about how liberals just want to kill everyone.
The fuck? Oh well.
What? Unthinking piece of...
What is wrong with people? Doesn't it actually matter what the facts are when you make a decision? I mean, to say that liberal people want to kill is to make an observation from a perspective completely devoid of knowledge of what any of the facts are.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, who started the war here? Was it liberals?
Yeah, it's like, American soldiers want to kill people!
What?
Look at them! They're over there killing people! Well, you know, a lot of people who are soldiers kill others because they think that it's a tragedy, but there's a conflict and that has to be done, and it's not that if they were in some other situation they would do anything, that they would be going around killing, right?
Right.
Soldiers come home and they're not wandering around the streets just killing random people. But that's what you get from a subculture that believes that rejects situational ethics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? It's just an excuse for them not to have to care about people's reasons for doing things.
They can crow and make all sorts of hyperbolic statements and just...
How are we doing on time?
Lie.
Halfway through.
Yeah. Well.
A little over.
You want to do another?
Me?
Or should I get to listener mail? Because I got a lot.
Okay, go for it.
Oh boy, do I have a lot.
boy.
People, you've been deluging us in emails.
You know, it's amazing how much feedback
in the last 2 weeks.
It's amazing how much feedback we get, considering we only have been going out publicly once in a while.
Yeah, a lot of people listen to the recorded episodes on the website.
That's right.
From June 5th, Walter in Washington, I believe, said, he writes, I believe that words yield great power if used correctly. Take creationists, for example. What if half the U.S. population started referring to them as anti-scientists? This is not a stretch. This is what they are. So why not call them that?
This is from Bad Astronomy blog. This guy said we should stop calling people pseudoscientists and start calling them anti-scientists.
Well,
he's passing on that.
Don't call them. Well, let me go with this guy's letter.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm glad to know it's similar to something somebody else said somewhere. Don't let them get away with using the term scientific creationism. There is nothing scientific about religious creationism. It's as far from science as you can get. Don't use the term intelligent design either. Call it what it is, anti-science. If most of the world were openly laughing at these imbeciles, they would eventually end up like the flat earthers.
I do use the words intelligent design, and I usually follow it up with is the same thing as creationism.
Yeah.
Because they don't want you to think that.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Walter says, but not with one thing, and I have a slightly different take on that than you, Russell. First of all, what if half the U.S. population started referring to them as anti-scientists? Well, you know, I agree that it would have to start somewhere.
Right.
But I don't know where he's getting the idea that half of the U.S. population is likely to start doing that.
Right.
If it's true. It's worth pointing out at every opportunity that they are against science, because that is true.
Mm-hmm.
But to call them that to say that they are that instead of intelligent design is a mistake, and I'll get back to that in a second. He says, don't let them get away with using the term scientific creationism. I agree there.
Right.
It's not scientific. If somebody else says scientific creationism, then they should be corrected. And if we use it and don't correct ourselves, then, you know, we have made a slight error. We're not siding with them. But when he says don't use intelligent design, I think we have to use the words intelligent design, because that accurately describes their claim.
Mm-hmm.
If we can't call their claim intelligent design, and if we just say anti-science, that is the equivalent of, you know, somebody else comes in and says, I have this thing, this theory of, quantum gravity. And you say, I'm not going to call that quantum gravity. I'm going to call you an anti-scientist because I happen to know that I don't agree with you. No. We need them allowed to use terms that accurately describe their bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Because unless we can accurately describe their bullshit, we can't pick it apart. So,
sure.
It is anti-scientific, and I think we should use both of those terms.
And whenever they put forth their studies and talk about science, you say, look, it's not science. What you're doing is not science.
I kind of agree with you. I think we should use the term intelligent design and educate people on what it really is, so that it becomes as much of a negative moniker as some people feel that, atheist may be to others. People, they've turned, some Christians have turned the word atheist or atheism into this ominous vilification of an ideology. And if you can do the same thing by making people understand what intelligent design is, how ridiculous it is, give them the facts about intelligent design, then the name that the people are using, saying, hey, we're pushing intelligent design, all of a sudden becomes synonymous with, hey, we're pushing anti-science, we're pushing, moronic ideas.
I agree with that. On June 12th, in Deaf Fuel, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
I don't know either, but he's in the chat room.
Would you ask him in the chat room quickly how to pronounce his handle?
Okay.
From Canada, says, I really like how the two shows, that's our audio show and the TV, public access TV show, the Atheist Experience, I really like how the two shows by the ACA complement each other nicely. Let's take a moment to compliment the...
we never talk about the Atheist Experience. He pointed out.
We don't, because we assume that most of our audience are elsewhere. But then recently things have changed where they're posting the audio portion of the TV show.
Oh, really?
On the website.
Oh,
so
yes,
it's
that
accessible.
Is correct.
And
I would also like to mention
we weren't pretending they didn't exist. That used to be that it didn't make sense to even talk about it now.
Yes, and I would also like to mention that there's a new host who is an incredibly handsome and talented guy.
And his name is?
Russell something.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I'm hosting on a temporary basis. I've got a time limit, and the expectation is that it's going to be passed on to Matt in a number of months.
It's a voluntary time limit. We're not trying to push Russell off, because I think Russell does a great job, and I like doing the show with him.
Thank you.
But you want to talk more about the Atheist Experience?
Well, Jeff has also been the host in the past.
Yeah, it's also a problem for me because living outside of Austin, I don't get that show. So I unless I go down to the studio, which I prefer not to do every week, I don't know what's going on the TV show. I know what goes on once a month because I show up there and co-host.
In Deaf Fuel.
In Deaf Fuel. Okay. In Deaf Fuel.
That was phonetic.
Thank you, In Deaf Fuel. So anyway, definitely keep their format separate, but you should advertise the Atheist Experience on the nonprofits, especially now that it's available online. You are correct, and we will try to remember to do that more. I'll write myself a note, which I'll never read because I'll probably be throwing this out before I could actually type it.
That's all right. I'm here now, and I'm more than happy to pimp the Atheist Experience.
Okay, that's a good idea. And the last show, you were talking about the Atheist Network and that it's not over as a radio station. This is getting into that territory we covered earlier. Duffy will wanted to know what was up. Well, now you know what was up, and I apologize for misleading our listeners last episode with my comments, because frankly, I'm not the producer. I don't deal directly with whoever is broadcasting us. I only get the second hand. It's all dealt with by the time I sit my fat ass down in this chair. So I was just not as keyed in on what the status was as Russell, and he let me get away with saying stuff that was just kind of goofy. So, thank you, Russell.
Sorry.
Let's see. And lastly, with the Smithsonian Institution in the news, I thought I would post this link for you, and it's history.
You want to remind us why the Smithsonian is in the news?
The Smithsonian was in the news on account of the fact that a right-wing Christian organization got the Smithsonian to allow them to use one of their theaters to have a private showing of a creationist film. And in keeping with its standard practice, the Smithsonian Institute, endorsement went on this project. And then the Smithsonian found, and then of course the fundamentalists started saying, "Yeehaw! Look at this! We're endorsed by the Smithsonian institution." In response to which the Smithsonian pulled out their support and said, "Well, you guys can go ahead and use the theater because you paid for it."
I may be wrong. It wasn't just any right-wing organization, was it? Wasn't it?
Which one?
The Discovery Institute?
Yeah.
Yes, it was the Discovery
Well, I
Institute.
mean, aren't they the proponents of intelligent design?
Yes, they are.
My goodness.
Which is really the same as creation.
They're anti-scientists, aren't they?
Those anti-scientists, those creationist morons.
To quote the page, the link that he sent us is www.si.edu/about/history.htm. He said, to quote from that page, in 1826, James Smithson...
About/what?
/history.htm. James Smithson, a British scientist, drew up his last will and testament, naming his nephew as beneficiary. Smithson stipulated that should his nephew die without heirs, as he would in 1835, the estate should go to the United States of America to found at Washington, under the name of the Smithsonian Institution, an establishment for the increase and diffusion of knowledge among men. The sexist. Have a great day, and I'll look forward to your next show. Well, you're sort of looking sideways at our next show now, Indefuel, as you're there in the chat room. June 15, Indefuel wrote us again! Damn, is this guy prolific.
He's busy.
There will always be areas of the universe where supposed intelligent creatures will reject to the small t truth for lies or superstition. Indefuel, is English not your first language? I don't mean that in a bad way.
Everybody
I'm just curious.
makes typos.
I'm curious. I've noticed in the chat room, Indefuel phrases things a little unusual from my perspective. I think he may have a interesting ethnic background. Will object to the small t truth for lies or superstition, in favor of lies or superstition. But this very statement implies that others will rally around the knowledge that we've accumulated so far. And he gives two links at www.pandasthumb.org, which is, quoting from that site, the virtual pub of the University of Ejikara. The patrons gather to discuss evolutionary theory, critique the claims of the anti-evolution movement, defend the integrity of both science and science education, and share good conversation.
It is an excellent blog site that I believe was started by some of the people who do talkorigins.org.
Awesome.
Cool.
The two sites
I read it
themselves,
every day now.
To get to the two pages that he specifically sent to us, you type in the previous thing that I said, pandasthumb.org, pt-archives/00146.html or pt-archives0011147.html. And those are stories of two different victories against the forces of evolution deniers. Mm-hmm. Sounded like good news, and thought it would be worth mentioning that we are not fighting a losing war, but some battles, cough, Kansas cough, we may end up losing. Yeah, we know it's ongoing, and until our culture shifts to where it is embarrassing to talk about things from that perspective, it's embarrassing to be an anti-scientific wacko. It's going to go on, and we'll have to keep fighting.
Indefuel is Canadian.
Canadian? Are you French Canadian?
He's being asked that right now.
All right. All right. On June 15, Dan of Louisville...
No, not French Canadian.
Okay.
So basically,
you just typed too fast, dude. Slow down. Form your sentences completely, please.
Please insult our listeners some more.
That's not an insult. This is, I typo very often in my own emails, I'm sad to say, but I don't do it in a sort of strangely consistent way that looks like I might have a background in a different language than English.
I'm anal about proofreading before hitting send.
I wish I was.
I'm oral about that. I don't know what that would mean. So, on June 15, Dan in Louisville...
out loud.
Yeah, that's right. To see if it sounds good.
That's why you have the special microphone.
Instead of me printing it out and shoving it out.
On June 15, Dan of Louisville, Kentucky, wrote, I've been a fan of the nonprofits for quite a while now, and I think yours is one of the best shows on the Atheist Network.
Kentucky, only two things come out of Kentucky. Oh, sorry, there we go.
The Atheist Network, which we have just established, really only had 2 shows, right?
Hey, but we're one of them.
And we were one of them.
Yay.
And now we're going to be on the freethoughtradio.com.
Yes.
And Dan, don't be slamming Reggie. Reggie does a good show. Is Reggie still doing a show?
Yes,
good.
He is doing his show himself. So
okay,
if you listen to the Atheist Network at the right time, you'll hear him. But that's it.
In the May 21 episode, during the discussion of children and profanity, you mentioned that you had had a vasectomy and did not intend on having children. This caught my attention because I, too, have chosen to live a child-free life, though I haven't had the operation yet, and it got me thinking. In my experience, the people who choose such a lifestyle are often progressive, liberal, or secular, though I'm sure there are exceptions. I thought it might be an interesting discussion topic for your show to talk about child-free lifestyles and why atheists are often among those who choose them.
Hello, just to mention.
Yeah?
Child-free, secular, progressive, liberal, with children right here.
Yeah.
Right.
And you 2 guys aren't married, right? Or are you?
Was that an exclusive way to have kids?
Well, no. Okay, good
I
point.
don't have any kids, then.
Good point.
I don't have any kids, and I'm not married. And
Have you had the operations? Any of you?
No.
No.
Yes.
You did?
Yes, I'm done having children.
I actually wouldn't mind having a kid, but I don't think it's ever actually going to happen because there's enough other things going on in my life that it's just not.
Closer to the microphone, sir.
It's just not. I don't think it's going to happen. It's not a pressing issue. I wouldn't mind having a kid. I'm not opposed to having a kid. I definitely am not interested in having one, right now. And as I get older, of course, it becomes less and less of a good idea. So.
I would like to go on record as saying that I recommend the experience of having kids, but not too many, which is why I had the operation.
See, I personally prefer to enjoy other people's kids. Because I can, feed them candy and get them all riled up and then leave and go home.
Do we have to tell the police about you?
It is different.
Different than what?
There's a difference between enjoying your own kids and other people's kids.
I'm sure.
I speak as someone who started as a stepfather and then became
That's
a father.
true. I've always gotten along well with kids, but I'm perfectly cool with not having any of my own.
Right now I'm enjoying my new nephew.
One of the things you don't notice when you don't have kids is just how much you sort of mold the way that person turns out, and that's really kind of a cool ego trip.
But one of the things you do notice if you don't have kids is how much more free time you've got than your friends that do.
Yeah.
How much more you can be, like a happy-go-lucky, going to the movies when you want, going out to dinner when you want. So from a perfectly selfish perspective, I say, have the operation.
Right. But I don't want you to think that having kids does not also have a selfish,
I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. I'm wondering, though, Russell, and I think you're the person to ask around the table here because you also have your blog, right? And you do this audio show, and you have the kids, right?
And the TV show.
Right. My point is,
I'm an obsessive World of Warcraft.
As a non-child creating person, right?
Yes.
It seems to me, from my subjective viewpoint, that the attraction would be this thing that people say about wanting to be immortal, to leave something behind, to have some tradition that carries on, to somehow contribute to the world in some way, and doing that through kids would be a way to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So would you then say it is similar to, obviously not identical, but the appeal is similar to having some project that you do that feels worthy and worthwhile and gives you a sense of accomplishment that?
Yes, it's similar to that, and and I don't mean to imply that one would substitute for the other.
Well, I do mean to imply that.
Okay, I do not.
Because I actually brought my baby to the audience. I have in my hands. We've talked about role-playing games on this website, and for all of you listening at home, here is the sound of my baby banging against the microphone. Okay.
Sure.
I have my superhero role-playing game that I have been working on for about 12 years is just about to come out on rpgnow.com, I think it is. Or you could go to my website, www.io.com/unigames/ll.html to go to my page for Living Legends, my superhero role-playing game.
So this whole
that is about to come out, and my point is, no, not at all, not at all. But I do think that that's a fair way to look at the question of whether you want kids or not. It's like there are a whole raft of things that you could do to get a sense of accomplishment in life, right? To validate your own existence, to feel that you have done something to contribute to the world, right?
That
something worthwhile that you can be proud of.
Kind of immortality.
And I think everybody needs that.
Have you ever been a teacher?
No, but I've actually thought a lot about wanting to do that.
I tutored a kid for like 2 years when I was in college, and I spent some time teaching adults how to program in between real jobs.
Yeah.
And they were some of the most satisfying experiences I've ever had. Because it's not just about doing something that you personally feel good about. It's also about spreading yourself around, becoming a part of more people.
Sure.
In a way.
Sure. I will take this moment to mention the 9-man team that is working right now to convert the characters from the Villains and Vigilantes adventures. That's my previous superhero role-playing game, which is tied up by its publisher in a way where I can't get any benefit from it anymore. They're converting those characters to living legends and building a big, cool website where fans of the old game will be able to just grab the stats from the old game and start playing the new game. And that has been incredibly rewarding.
I'm sure it has.
Right? And this is a team effort, right? I love sitting here with you guys and making this together. It's awesome.
And 30 years from now, these shows will hopefully still be available.
Yeah.
On the internet. That's one of the things.
Information on the internet never dies.
If you make a child, hopefully 30 years from now, it will also still be available.
I agree. Yeah. My little piece of, I guess if we're talking about like a search for immortality, my thing is more to have words and thoughts and ideas of mine continue on. And it's because one of my greatest heroes is Colonel Ingersoll, who wrote towards the end of the 19th century, and reading through his essays, it was like, without getting all metaphysical, it was like he was sitting next to me explaining things.
Yeah.
And I would like to, and I'm nowhere near this point now, but I'd like to get, my thoughts out there, written or on the television show or on the radio, whatever, in a way that kind of becomes immortal, where 100 years from now somebody might find an essay I wrote and it might change their life, and that to me is a little piece of immortality.
A project that I've thought about, I'm not sure this is even my idea, or it could have been somebody else that came up with the thought, is I've read those Ingersoll essays too. I think they're freaking awesome, and damn, I wish they were audio recordings in MP3.
The only audio recording, and you're talking, I suppose, of somebody else reading them.
Yeah.
There actually is an audio recording of Ingersoll's voice.
Yeah. Really?
It doesn't sound anything like I expected. It was actually sort of a letdown, because I had built him up to this, sort of standing there.
It should be James Earl Jones.
Yeah. But I built him up to that point, and when I finally heard an audio of his voice, it was kind of a letdown. He has a weaker voice, kind of higher pitched. And this is a man, the essays that we're reading, they're not things that he just wrote. These were public speeches that he delivered to massive crowds.
And other people wrote them down.
Other people wrote them, and he wrote them.
Yeah.
But he would speak to massive crowds. This was during a time in the U.S. history where free thought was on the rise.
Right.
Where it wasn't automatically evil for somebody to say something against the church, for somebody to speak honestly about their beliefs. If you contradicted what the majority of the population felt. Anybody who hasn't read his work can go to infidels.org in the library in the history section. All of his writings are there.
Yeah, cool. Well, I agree with you that that's a good form of immortality. I think passing on your memes is cool, and passing on your genes is cool. I think they're cool for similar reasons, but in different ways.
Sure, I think that's fair.
I also think that stupid people reproduce a lot.
Yeah.
And you want to outcompete them?
I'm doing my own little part to counter that.
Good, man.
Dan goes on to ask some specific questions that maybe we could kick around. Okay. Is being child-free an issue atheists should care about? I think no, until there arises a big anti-child-free backlash from the fundamentalists.
I've heard that child-free people get a lot of flack from fundamentalists who say that it's your duty to procreate. I think that view is disgusting. You should procreate because you want to. And if you don't, then you shouldn't.
Well, you're talking about people who believe they're commanded to be fruitful and multiply, period.
Yes.
You know.
Well, I guess, okay, so to the extent that religious people give those who choose to do something else with their lives than have kids, right? That religious people give those people a hard time. To that extent, it's worth atheists caring about. But I don't see an organized movement. And it's awfully hard to have much to say about, occasional, rude comments from Christians.
They're too busy focusing on gays and brain dead people.
Yeah, I think, though,
not to put those in the same category.
If they complete their takeover of our nation and our culture, they will eventually get around to the child-free folks.
Right.
Is the compulsion to raise kids and have a family religiously motivated primarily? I would think not.
No.
I think that can't be true, right?
It's an evolutionary compulsion. We wouldn't be here.
Yeah, bunnies do it. They don't have religion.
Yeah, they don't have religion.
And that doesn't seem to slow them down.
Right.
And they multiply like
probably
like
not.
Of course,
when he says compulsion,
Richard Dawkins made a really good point one time, which was he said, we're not programmed to have children. We're programmed to really want sex and really love the thing that comes out at the end of it. But it's only recently that we've had the power to decide that that's okay, and still decide not to have those children at the same time. So, so it could not be as ridiculous as it sounds to say that that there are religious motivations for choosing to have kids when you could just as easily choose not to.
Yeah. Now, I think our first reaction to this word compulsion was biological. Right. But if he's talking about a compulsion from your neighbor, right?
Yeah.
If he's talking about
peers,
pressure from society, that could be primarily religious.
Sure.
At least in the sense that religion likes to take credit for fucking everything. And so that biological urge is something they've claimed is really a message from the big daddy in the sky.
Right.
Are we conditioned by society and religion to want to have kids so as to create more potential believers? I think that's a damn good question. I think I'm absolutely convinced that in the Catholic Church, their opposition to birth control is primarily
that.
Yes, primarily just trying to get a sheer numerical advantage over people who think a different way.
Right.
But outside the Catholic Church, I'm not so sure. Anybody have an opinion on this?
My uncle who lives in Dallas has 7 kids, and it's because he feels compelled by God to have 7 kids. And they homeschool them all. They are devoutly religious. He used to be a missionary. He's now a doctor.
Is he Baptist or Catholic?
Neither.
He's Pentecostal, some other crazy.
He's been involved with Pentecostal, not the snake handling Pentecostals, but the speaking in tongues variety.
Really, that's 2 different varieties? I thought they all did both.
No, they don't all do both.
Oh, weird.
The snake handling Pentecostals are a very, very small minority of the Pentecostals. And I think it's because the other Pentecostals discovered that those passages in the Bible are fictitious, and and invented and don't exist in the oldest manuscripts of Mark.
And this guy is what relation to yours?
He's my uncle.
Uncle? Well, next time you see your uncle, tell him, if he would just handle his own snake more often, then he would get the same personal benefit.
Yeah, I think I'd probably pass on that.
Yeah. Tasteless comment for the day, everyone. In case you missed it. Dan goes on, I would love to hear your thoughts on these issues as well as Russell's and Dennis's and Matt's on an upcoming show. I would also, if it's not too personal for you to talk about, like to hear about your decision to live child-free, why you chose it, why you think it's important. I don't think it's important.
No.
I mean, it's what I decided to do, and I think what is important is that I have the freedom to decide what I want to do. That just happened to be the decision I made. I don't think that I didn't choose not to have kids for some, ecological reason or philosophical reason or anything like that. Frankly, I chose not to have kids because it was my wife's idea that we shouldn't have any. And we made a big mistake. We didn't even talk about it till after we were married. It was our one big mistake in deciding to get married, right? Everything else... I think I've told the story about when we had to talk to the minister when we were going to reenact our marriage in a church for the family, and the church required that you have these meetings with the pastor. Yeah. He was so incredibly impressed with how prepared we were to be married that he said he had never met anyone as prepared as we were to get married, which led me to think, though I didn't say anything to his face, that you are a worthless human being then, because it isn't your job to prepare people for life. But the one thing we neglected to talk about was whether we wanted kids or not. And my wife told me one day, shortly after we were married, that why no? She had no intention ever. And I was taken aback, not because I had some strong impulse to have some, but because we had never talked about it, and holy crap, this could be a huge problem. But then I thought about it and said, no, I don't particularly care. So cool, I'm fine with that. As it has played out, I'm very glad we made that decision because our lives have been incredibly fun. And I would rather get my sense of accomplishment from doing the projects that I'm interested in than from raising a kid.
Yeah.
But that's not to say I have any problem with from that. I mean, we do still have death. We still will need to get human beings replaced. Yes, I agree it's happening at faster than we need it, but some of that has to go on.
Well, my reason's bizarre and completely irrational. I'm afraid to have children.
Afraid?
Yes.
Afraid?
Yes. Because I have a bad temper. And I'm not sure I could keep from shaking the So, no, I will not have children. Now, if I could,
you're very wise for a violent person.
Yes. It comes out so rarely.
Yeah.
But and it's precisely the thing that sets me off is precisely the kind of thing that little kids do. So it's just a bad idea all around. So, now, if I could install a machine in my brain that could keep me from, that could keep my temper from setting me off, or could keep me from going off, hey, then the problem would be fixed, and that avenue would be open to me, and I'd have to reevaluate, what I want to do at that point.
But you could probably answer the question whether you would like to, assuming that you.
I like the idea.
You like the idea. I'm not trying to play some crazy. I'm certainly not trying to get into an argument with you about free will again.
Okay, here's this horrible, selfish thing here.
Yes.
Yeah, I like my freedom. I'll be able to do anything I want anytime. It's great. And yes, I'd like a kid. That'd be great. Starting at age 12. I don't want to go through all the insensate poo cleaning and crap stage. That is just not attractive to me at all.
And
I don't feel
not
I'm
going to downplay that, as well as the feeling that you'd like to do a Homer Simpson sometime.
And in that unattractive poo cleaning stage, I don't feel I'm passing on anything valuable to the child.
So adopt a 3-year-old.
Yeah, that's or whatever age I feel acceptable. Yeah, because I've talked to some kids that were really bright, and I went, damn, that would be cool to talk to at length about all sorts of stuff and do stuff with.
And
that
not
would
only
be cool.
talk to, but they're still receptive to new ideas at that age more than most people.
That would be kick-ass.
To stick stuff in that brain.
But no, I can't do the
I'm going to wait until
crying poo cleaning.
I'm going to wait until my consciousness is uploaded into some space interstellar space vehicle, and then I'm going to wander around and find some sentient species on another planet.
Them
and then I'm going to dick with them. Matt, where do you stand on poo cleaning?
I actually can't clean poo.
Can't you?
No, My brother and sister-in-law adopted a nephew, and they've recently returned from Korea.
Is really relevant?
Where they adopted me. I can't do it. I become sick to the point of vomiting if I try.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard it's different if it's actually your own kid. But
well, you learn to. I mean, it's disgusting, and then you get used to it.
I'm not sure I want to get used to it. I think it's one of the larger points. But
I'm not saying I couldn't do it.
It's
just
on some levels, I would like to have a kid, and I think there are a lot of rewarding things that I would enjoy. Good arguments for having a kid. I've got nothing against it. I also think there are some good arguments for not having a kid, and not just because I enjoy my freedom, but there's also, population issues, and how would I deal with having a child that, it could be abnormal in some case, or, wasn't up to my expectations of, after having dealt. My nephew is brilliant, is scary brilliant for a 4-year-old, and it was obvious from his infancy. My brother and sister-in-law got lucky. And, I'm not saying that I wouldn't love whatever kid I had regardless. It's just not really high on my priority list now. So I'm childless by choice without the operation.
Fair enough.
But you're not seeing anyone.
Well, kind of.
She's translucent. Matt's girlfriend. Dan goes on. I personally believe that...
Goes on?
The letter goes on.
This is an important issue to our listener, Dan.
3 minutes left in the show.
Yeah.
3 minutes.
Let's go quick.
All right.
What did you say?
Let's just move on.
Oh.
Matt from Oklahoma City writes, I'm a member of Oklahoma Atheists, www.aok.positiveatheist.com, and am currently endeavoring to get America Online to provide its atheist and agnostic members with icons/buddy symbols. To date, one can get icons and buddy symbols on AOL for everything from Michael Jordan to Sikhism to Care Bears to the Green Bay Packers. Still, AOL does not provide its atheist and agnostic members with a symbol for our community. Please take the time to send out an action alert to your group's members. I've shared this with the ACA Board of Directors. We'll see what we're going to do.
Okay.
I'm sure at least some of them use AOL as their server. Well, what we'll do, Matt, is we'll pass that on to our listeners here. If you're on AOL, I think that's a fine project to do.
Yeah.
June, I think, 16th, this was sent to our through our website, and there's no name attached. Hello, I am listening to your latest show and heard you talk about this guy called Anthony Marr. That's the tiger guy. Yeah, that's the tiger guy who is going around with his... the weird philosophy that he wants atheists to listen to. I'm co-host of the Hellbound Ali show.
Oh, this guy is in the chat room then.
Is it? Because I went to the
believe
Hellbound
that's
Ali
Lord of
website
Unbelief.
and there's 2 of them, huh?
Lord of Unbelief.
Oh, or Lord of Unbelief is the person? Cool.
Yeah.
Hi, Lord of Unbelief.
And we've been having actually a bit of an argument in the chat room. But I'll
Have
tell
you?
you
About
later.
what? Oh, okay. We might like to have this guy on eventually, mostly to skewer him if we do. Do you know how we can join him? If you mean reach him, he's got a website. It's I would just look up Anthony Marr. It's not going to be hard to find his site because he puts a big effort into self-promotion. He said he also wanted to correct a misconception. You say the Atheist Network is looking for new shows. This is not true. They've refused to have our show on repeatedly. I'm sorry. I was mistaken in our last episode. I wasn't aware
And it was my fault.
exactly how... Well, you could have corrected me, but you just let me go.
I was busy in the chat room.
That was it. You probably had your headphones on. So, yeah, sorry. I was mistaken. I thought that there was still a effort going on, and there's not. Okay, and with
15
this
seconds.
much time in the show, we can't get to any more news.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we want to encourage this behavior of writing us a lot of emails, because it does take a bit of the show. But please, if you have important things to discuss, don't hesitate. Maybe we'll just not read them all from now on. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks to the crowd in the chat room. Thanks to the crew, everybody. Dennis.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Matt. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
It's been a hoot.
Bye, everyone.